My name is Mark. I'm being recorded. So my name is Mark. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I am glad to be here. My sponsor's name is Al. I sponsor guys who sponsor guys. I forgot all about the McDonald's thing because it really didn't faze me anymore. I've done tons of work in Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's, and I could care less if everybody was eating their Big Mac, looking at me, reading out this book. I really didn't care. And yes, the reason is mostly because until I know you good enough, you're not coming to my house. And, it's true. But anyway, I'm here to counter everything you heard earlier. And, I'm not gonna go along with this. I'm an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. Even though I got sober at 26 years old, I know I wouldn't have made 30. I was thinking about, I always claim my seat, give me a little drunken story. And I was thinking about work, and I never got fired from a job, but I got in trouble at several of my jobs for drinking. And there was one back in the day, I was working for a moving company out of Hyannis on the Cape. If you haven't figured it out, we're from the Northeast. And they flew us to Nantucket for a job in this little prop plane, which started my desperate fear of flying. Until you're flying in the winter on a little plane with 6 people and a propeller. It scared me. Anyway, we do this job, and the weather got so bad. When they ship the truck over on the boat, they put it on, they load it, they unload it, they give it to you, you go do your thing. And, we had to take the boat back because the weather had gotten so bad that, and it was like a 2-hour boat ride back from Nantucket. And so I didn't, others bought alcohol, and I partook in that alcohol, even though I wasn't supposed to. And the reason I got this job, and I was told straight out, is because I could pass a drug test. Most of the moving people couldn't, so I could pass a drug test. And a couple hours later on the boat, the people who unloaded the boat and unloaded the truck would not release the truck to me because I was intoxicated. And everybody was intoxicated, and they had to call our boss. He was not happy that he had to come and drive this truck back to the yard because all his employees were drunk. And he lined us up, and he walked up and down just yelling and going, and you and this, and I expected more out of you. And I said, I could still pass a drug test. And he was not happy with that. And I was probably 21. And I was already struggling with the fact that when I started drinking, I couldn't stop. I had no button. And I didn't want to do these things. And I didn't understand why I kept doing these things. And I wasn't around anybody healthy, obviously, who was, to help me, like have a talk with me. I was kind of spinning my wheels already. I already had a kid at this point, possibly 2, 1 at this point, and a job and a career, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was totally full of fear all the time. And the alcohol and other things earlier on in my life worked to let me breathe a little bit. And at this point, it was all alcohol because I could pass a drug test. And, and I remember that, right? He had to drive, he threw us all in the back of the truck, and yelled at us, and then I got my car and I drove home. Like this. He didn't give a crap about that. They wouldn't release the truck. And he wouldn't have cared if they did. But anyway, so, I and I always say this, kind of staggered up the ladder of life. I did. I got a better job, and I got this job, and I got a better job. And I wish Bernie was here because he would appreciate this. I remember I got this job, and I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life. I'm 23, and I'm drinking green bottled Canadian beer and Canadian whiskey. I've arrived. I swear to God, for some reason, Canadian alcohol meant something to me. So I'm drinking Molson and Seagum 7 and Canadian Mist, and I'm like, and my job depends on my driver's license, and I can't not drink and drive, and I have no stop button, and I started to put 2 and 2 together that certain things in me didn't mix well, like whiskey, and green bottle beer gets expensive when you're drinking all day and night and on your days off, and so I'd go from drinking Molson Gold to Seagum 7 to drinking, Busch Light and a pint of Hot Damn. sometimes a half a pint, because that didn't count as drinking somewhere in my head. She'd come home, how much you drank? A couple of beers, and, I'd be on the floor. But that didn't matter. I actually think I used drinking as much beer as I did as kind of control, because I drank whiskey the same way I drank beer. And I drank Hot Damn and everything out of the freezer. And I realized it's probably not normal drinking when you don't use a glass. I did not use a glass. It just, drank like a pig. And, at this point, I'm 23, 24, married, have a job, have a career, have a beautiful wife, solid, the rock, the wind beneath my wings, and, all this stuff. And I just said this earlier. We didn't hang around with normal people. I think we were like a little abnormal on the curb too. And it got to the point where people would show up and like, oh, you're both coming out? It's like, yeah, we're not going with you. And we didn't mix well together. It didn't end well. It really didn't. And to speed up the end for me, I just struggled with, why is this happening? And I literally remember leaning in the bathroom, beer in my hand, cigarette in my mouth, looking in the mirror going, what is the matter with you? Why do you keep doing these things? And I really was baffled, because she'll attest to this, there was nobody around who was healthy. Nobody around took me aside and said, hey, do you think you're drinking too much? Hey, do you think this is smart to do this? Hey, I got in trouble at the next job for drinking. I got in trouble at the last job I had up there for drinking on the clock, but it wasn't my fault, because the kid I was drinking with, his crazy ex-girlfriend was stalking him and took a stupid picture of us, and I got caught up in this, so it wasn't me. Well, you were drinking. Yeah, this guy, And I remember looking at him going, you gotta get rid of her, she's nuts. Got me in trouble for drinking on the clock. And anyway, so here I am, I'm 26 years old. I cannot stop drinking. I'm drinking whenever I'm not working, I'm drinking. At the end of this, I'm shaking. I'm drinking NyQuil in the middle of the night, and to get rid of this cold that I chronically had. And I remember, especially after my weekend, my 2 days off, whatever they happen to be at the time, I remember just shaking and getting up and drinking NyQuil. And I'm going, oh, I'm up, I might as well have a smoke. So I go have a smoke. Well, I'm up, I might as well get rid of this NyQuil taste with a couple of beers. And then I'd be like, whew. And I remember, honest to God, sitting there going, God, I gotta quit smoking. I think I'm having a nicotine fit. Right? I did, and that made sense to me. They talk about in the doctor's opinion that, the alcoholic life seems like the only normal one. That was fine. If she happened to notice all this, she wouldn't have said anything other than, it was normal. It was not abnormal to walk out in my living room and find one of our friends who staggered in the middle of the night on the couch or something like that. So this all came to a fun end for me. It was actually Super Bowl Sunday, January 26th of 1997. Typical day, drink all day, lost money on the game, came home, became a statistic, and ended up at my mother's house yet again. And it took years into Alcoholics Anonymous because me and my mother butted heads, and she was on my resentment list. It took years for me to see the other side of that, even though I was pointed out before, but of what I would do to this woman who was widowed. She was alone, a little dog, and I come, and I want to do it, pounding on the door at 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, and, I probably scared the crap out of her every time, even though she knew it was me. I'll tell you for today, if you pound on my door at that time of day, I'm going to answer it a little different than my mother did. And the only reason she let me in all these times because she hated her more than she hated me. And that's the honest truth, right? Yeah, I know. And that saved me from getting in some flea-bitten motel. So it was the same crap over and over again. This time was a little different. Next day I didn't want to drink anymore. I just was done. And the people in my life, God, sucks getting old. The people in my life at this point, like my mother, I staggered in with a drink in my hand and one in my pocket. And my mother knew better than to throw it away. She put the one that was in my hand that I ended up passing out on the couch, she put a plastic bag and a rubber band over it instead of throwing it away because she knew it would set me off the next day. And the one in my pocket she must have fished out and she stuck it in the fridge. And as soon as I got up the next day, sick as a dog, I finished both of them. And I stood there and I threw because I was such a nice guy, I threw the empty in the sink and I went and passed back out. And that's the last drink I had. I didn't know it at the time. And a few days, or next day, I tried to talk my way back in the house, and for the first time, she had enough, and she called me an alcoholic. And she told me to leave. And I left, and I had a 30-pack of Bud buckled in the passenger seat of my pickup truck for safety. I did, because I would hitch, and it would end up on the floor, and then I couldn't reach it. And that's the truth. I never wore the seatbelt, but and I left there and I stopped and I bought a pack of cigarettes because I had quit smoking like a month before. So I ended up smoking, and I gave that away like 2 weeks later. I drove with it for 2 weeks trying to get sober, and I met a man at work a few days later, and he asked me what was wrong, and I just I told him my wife had thrown me out. She thinks I'm an alcoholic, blah, blah, blah. And this particular guy, who I didn't particularly like because he had particular comments about me drinking on the clock after my shift, and which was none of his business. And he'd say stupid things like, do you really think that's smart when you got to drive home and your livelihood depends on your driver's license? You get these stupid ideas from, and so I didn't like him. But for some reason I told him what was going on, and he says, wait a minute. And he turned around, he walked away, and he comes back and he handed me a big book, a meeting list book, and a 24-hour book, and he told me he was 4.5 years sober. And I was about 4 days sober, and I was sick as a dog. And for one brief moment, it felt like an eternity. I looked up at him. I was still sitting in my pickup truck. I said, what do I do? And he told me for about 45 minutes what had happened in his life. And weird stuff like, I bet you're going to get less W-2s. Why would that? What's that work got to do with this? Well, I changed jobs about every year and a half because I would get discontent real quick. And I did everything in the book just differently. I got to work nights because I'll drink less. I got to work days because I'll drink less. I'll do this. I got to work weekends. I got to get out of this industry. And I did all these things. I twisted some stuff up. I changed some things. And he told me that, his credit's got this and that, and all these things. I'm like, I just want to stop drinking. He goes, well, God through AA, you never have to drink again. I said, okay. So I ended up working that night. And this guy didn't work this day. It was a Saturday. I think it was a Saturday. And he didn't work Saturdays. Why was he there that day? I have no idea. I looked today, it was divine intervention because I was about at my wit's end. And so I go out and I work that night. I flip open the 24-hour book. And the first thing I did was read my birthday day. Very important. And I read something else. Then I flip open to the chapter to wives, and I'm reading how I can get back in my house. And I'm doing just everything. I had no idea what I was doing. And and he gave me this book, and he said, go to a meeting tomorrow. We worked opposite shifts, so I get up, I overslept, and I ended up at a meeting the next day. And it took everything in my power to walk in that building. I mean, I was just like a raw nerve. I was still shaking. And I'm smoking like a chimney. And I'm sick. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. And but all that helped me. I didn't end up in detox and get all meted out. I'm in my mother's basement crying, and she's yelling at me, blaming her. And I agree with you. And but I'm in trying. She goes, do you want me to go? She actually asked. She goes, you want me to go get you some alcohol? And I said, I don't think I should. And she goes, you want me to go get you some O'Doul's? I said, I really don't think that's a good idea either. Thank God, because she was trying everything. She was all upset, and she did admit that you ruined me. And I would have been normal, I pretty much, if I didn't get involved. I do think so. But anyway, so took everything in my power to walk into this building. And if there wasn't an open seat, I think I would have left. And I went and I just beelined it, and I sat there, and I heard all these people. And I heard a guy say, the first drink gets you drunk. And I was like, oh, shit. Yeah, I knew that from when I was a kid, a teenager. As soon as I knew that my whole life up to this point. I just never had a name for it. I just never had the description for it. I didn't know why. I thought I was just abnormal. And find out I am, but not in a room like this. That was an abnormal reaction. But it talks about lose control of your liquor consumption once you start to drink. Well, when that was explained, I was like, all right. And I had no problem. I said, yeah, that's what happens to me every time. In the second half of the first step with, your life is unmanageable. I had less trouble accepting that. And I hear people say, oh, I couldn't really accept that. Both hands, my life was a disaster. I was not happy in all this stuff. So I come to Alcoholics Anonymous the first day. I hear all these things. I meet a guy at the coffee pot afterwards and clean it up. There's no clubhouses. Everything we did up there, you had to set up the hall and break down the hall and do all this stuff, and you leave and there's not another meeting there for a week in that particular place. So I meet this guy at the coffee pot, and he kind of qualifies me a little bit more than the first guy did. And I'm nodding my head, and I'm like, yeah. I said, well, what am I going to do? And he started giving me instructions, and Dante talked about the getting on your knees thing, and he told me to do all these things. And so I go home, and I'm in my mother's basement. If you've been in the Northeast, little basement windows about yay big. And I'm like, I don't even get a bed to lean up against because I'm on a mattress on the floor. And so I hit my knees, and I'm looking to make sure nobody's looking out the windows, because everybody's looking in the basement windows to see if I'm praying. And the same thing. Dante said, I'm worried about this. Not too long before that, I might not have finished completely getting ready before I started peeing, and it didn't seem to bother me. But it didn't seem to bother. When I got sober, I had hair down the middle of my back, earrings, all the stuff, and there was probably usually vomit in my hair at some point, maybe old crusty vomit. That's why I wore it in a ponytail, so it didn't dip in the toilet when I was puking. But I did it. The willingness was there because he said, do these things, start doing these things. And I was like, the best thing that happened to me is my character defects of feeling less than, feeling like crap, feeling, I had no positive opinion about myself. Actually, I honestly believe saved my life in Alcoholics Anonymous because I knew I couldn't fix me. I had tried, I changed jobs, I changed what I drank, I did everything, we broke up and back and forth several times. I worked nights, I worked days, I did everything I could to try to fix this problem, except for stop drinking, because I didn't realize that was the problem. I really didn't, and because my intentions were always good when I started. I'm just going to relax, I'm going to have a drink, and then things went bad. And every time, I never got a window of, I sponsor a guy now who wasn't an alcoholic. He crossed that invisible line you used to hear about, and he could drink and stop, and I was like, oh, this guy's full of crap. I said, as I'm taking him through the work, I'm gonna, I'll prove to him that he was always an alcoholic. You know what? He wasn't. He could actually drink. At one point, he could stop and moderate. At one point, he could just not drink. He could do all these things. Then he, and then he couldn't. And I never had that window. I never drank normally, socially. Like I said, I didn't even use a glass. So, I think that's part of social drinking is you're probably not drinking out of the bottle like a pig. But I was. And I remember all these years later, I was sober. And there's one thing that ever hit me weird. I was watching TV, and they had this commercial for like mojito, and the guy's crushing it, and everybody's dancing, everybody's having fun. And I remember sitting back going, I never experienced 1 second of that drinking. Then the sanity part came in. It's like, I would have been thrown out of that bar within 2 minutes. 2 minutes flat, they would get out. And there was, we did a AA Big Book weekend up north at this place, and it was under a hotel, and there was a hotel bar and all that stuff. I went there once, that I'm aware of. I went there once, I walked in the door, and the guy looked at me and said, you get out. And I was like, and I was with Scott, and you gotta be talking to Scott, because he's a drunk, right? And the guy looked right at me, pointed, he goes, get out. I was like, he's like, get out now, I'm calling the cops. I'm like, I never even been here before. I was like, turned around. To this day, I don't know why that happened. No clue. I didn't think I'd been there before. I obviously may have. But anyway, so I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, complete blank slate. I don't know. My only experience with AA people, I had a friend who had a real father who was a dry drunk, who was a miserable SOB, and his mother's third husband was sober in AA, and this guy would sing like, oh, love God. And I'm like, oh my God. So these are my examples of Alcoholics Anonymous. Then I come in, I meet this guy, he becomes my sponsor, and I start doing the deal. And things are not going well because I stopped drinking, and the rest of the stuff should get better now, right? No, I wasn't allowed back to go home, which probably saved my life back in the day. I didn't think so at the time, but I started taking instructions. Going back to what I said, I was convinced I couldn't fix me, so I took suggestions, I took criticism, I took instruction. I took whatever you were willing to give me because I had no clue on how to fix me. I wanted my life to get better, and I didn't know what to do. And they said, well, fortunately, there's a set of directions that you have that we can go through together, and life will start getting better. The outside stuff may not get better, but you'll start getting well from the inside out. And I thought that was kind of dumb, but I didn't complain. I said, okay, what do we do? And we started doing some stuff. We started doing it. In that little place that I went to first, I became the cigarette butt picker-upper outside. I did. And I became the coffee maker, and we'd set up chairs and I'd sweep the floor. And I did that every Sunday for years. But in between all this, I still had real life responsibilities. I went to work and started getting my kids in the weekends, and after a bit, and started doing these things, and I had to grow up. I grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous. Again, I was 26 years old when I got sober. I had a soon-to-be ex-wife, 2 kids, a house, a dog, and a cat, and right after I lost 33% of my gross, and ended up in my mother's basement. And then by the time I was 27 years old, I lived on my own. I got an apartment, and I'm doing all these things in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm leaning on these guys who are ahead of me and telling me just keep putting one foot in the other, just keep doing this and that, and I'm dealing with this, and it was not fun, but I needed so much help in here. At this point, I already owned the house and lost the house, and I didn't know how to run a checkbook. I didn't know how to go get utilities turned on. I certainly didn't know how to cook, which was already pointed out. So I got my little apartment, and I got my microwave, and I got my Hungry Man dinners, and I had no money because it was all going over here. And it literally, I still say the number today, and people are like, damn, but what I'm doing is I'm participating in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm connecting every day to this God of my understanding, which, so what do you got to lose? I said, nothing. So I'm connecting, I'm doing that, I'm doing groups, going on commitments. AA up north is totally different than down here. This is what we did. It's speaker meetings. They're all speaker meetings. In your group, who met on this night, would go talk at this group who met on that night, and then they'd come back on your night and they'd talk, and there'd be 3, 4, 5 of us, and everybody would get their allotted little slot of time, so you hope more people showed up. And this is something I did. The group I belonged to was, you had to have 90 days before they'd let you up here. And I remember the first time I did it, my sponsor took me aside. He goes, "You'd be up there." He goes, "You'd be honest, you'd be brief, and you'd be seated." And okay. And I get up there, I was like, oh my God. I couldn't take my glasses off then and not see everybody, because I don't care at this point. But this is very uncomfortable for me. I was that person back in the day that I needed something in my system to talk to you. I did. I was just so full of fear. I used to say, oh, it's shy and quiet. And today, through work, through that, I know I was just loaded with fear and self. I could not get out of fear and self without something until it came to God and the 12 steps. And even that was kind of slow. But I was forced into situations of growth. And I didn't want to grow. I just wanted to stop drinking and get my life back together. And what I realized is my life was never together, so I had to totally start over. And I literally had men, friends of mine, sit me down and show me how to pay bills and how to get utilities turned on and how to deal with situations that were you know, my sponsor said, why don't you start praying for a 5-second delay before you open your mouth? And then, you know, after a lot more phone calls of failure, he goes, stop praying for a 10-second delay before you start opening your mouth. And I mean, it just kept growing. I had to, in corrective measures, and started coming up with this. And why don't you start doing this? And why don't you start doing that? And not in the way that it was sponsor dependent. I would call him up and tell him how I failed. And he would make suggestions, and I would take them. And I'd call him up and tell him how I failed. And he would make more suggestions, and I would take them. And it just, you know, and today I can say this, and I say it at meetings all the time, I fail my review every single day. I do. I fail every single day. I get up in the morning, I get up very early in the morning, and I do my upon awakening, and somebody didn't silence their phone. And I get up and I do my upon awakening, and at this point I have tweaked it and streamlined it to address my specific needs with God, and where the areas that I still need improvement. And at the end of the night, I have failed every single day. I don't believe I'll ever pass that review, but you know what? I keep doing it because, you know, I keep adding all these corrective measures. I keep having to get up earlier in the morning to fit this all in. And but anyway, so my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous is really more what I want to talk about. Because when I got here, the old timers that were there, and like I said, I looked like a hot mess. And I remember this old lady, hair out the hair, angry, and she comes over and she says, "Oh, I love you." I was, oh my God. You know, I was just so uncomfortable in here. And I started getting back, slowly started, you know, doing these things. And I heard stuff like, if you're a drunken a-hole and you stop drinking, what are you left with? And, you know, being new, he's like, "An asshole." I was like, oh. I said, okay. And then it clicked. I'm like, oh, so I got work to do, you know. And it was true. I had tons of character defects. So we started addressing those and those ones, and it's like whack-a-mole. It just still to this day, it really is. But I heard a lot of good things, and I started doing these things. I started participating in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started seeking out more. I wanted more. I still do that. I want more. I don't settle well. And it could be an asset or a defect. Some of the job issues back in the day, I was trying to correct stuff, but I'll get a good job that I hunted after. You know, a month or two into it, it's like, let's see what else is out here. I want more, not in an unhealthy way always, and it's worked out good for me. I've made it so far from green bottled Canadian beer and you know, in Canadian whiskey, where I thought I hit the pinnacle of life. I've actually done quite well. And it's only, and I don't chase the string back, why I'm an alcoholic, why all that stuff. Anything I really do today, if I chase the string back at all, it all goes back to God through AA. I haven't had a drink in over 28 years, and it's because I've done the footwork. It's not because my attendance in alcohol, which is great, and I always use the analogy of the gym. You can come here every day, you can go to the gym for 90 days in a row. Don't do anything, just go. You are not gonna look like Ryan, you're gonna look like me. And you know, it's your participation. This is not, you know, it's just not, it's a participation deal. And but I was doing everything I was told to do, and then life changed. She ended up calling me up one day and asking for help. I was over 2 years sober, and my first reactions were not well. But I ended up giving her a phone number, and she started her journey into recovery. And then, how can I word this? Then the manipulation started, and that's the honest truth. It's the, you know, she had a lot of things that I was interested in: my kids, food, and other things. But you know, at the time, I didn't have most of those things going on. I had bought my house back from myself and gave her the money at this point, honestly. So I was living in my old house, sober, one step up from a mattress on my mother's basement. And you know, I'm working, I'm doing all these things, and I'm participating in AA, and then she jumped into the fold, and because I was a good ex-husband at this point, and that's because my sponsor and the people in here told me to be. I took the suggestions of the 5-second delay. I took the suggestions of not engaging. I took the suggestions, and I prayed to God for help with my character defects of being reactionary and being this and being that, and all these things that I thought were kind of dumb at the time, but I was willing to do because these guys told me this is what we did, and if you want what we have, do what we do. And I was like, oh, that sounds so stupid, but you know what? It works. I mean, it's like, this is what I did. This was the avenue I took, and you know, give it a shot. What do you got to lose? And they said that a lot. And I'm like, yeah, you know, you're right. You know, every time I try to fix stuff myself, it didn't go good. And I had a good track record of nonsense that I try to fix, and it didn't go well. So we get involved with Alcoholics Anonymous, and we end up getting, you know, all this stuff, and life kind of took off. It was very positive, and I had now a wife. Well, we're all one happy dysfunctional family. We have another kid, you know, all this wonderful stuff, and we hit a lot of speed bumps, and there was a lot of crap, and there was a lot of this, and there was a lot of that, and we went to different AA. We had completely separate AA stuff, and in the meantime, I'm still seeking. I want more. I want more than just not drinking. Not drinking is not enough. And I want change, and I want growth, and I want all these things. And you know, I think it's, yeah, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. I'll steal that line. And things are tough. I mean, I was not working with a lot when I got here. I didn't have a lot of character assets. And I had to flip most of those defects around to something good. And I didn't really know how. And, you know, you take advice from certain people. And the biggest thing that changed in my life, we did we did everything AA asked, and it wasn't enough. Then, God, I don't even know how long ago. So 28, I was probably coming up close to 10 years sober. And everything was good. Life was good. We had a baby, sober baby, all the stuff, and I got to participate in all these wonderful things that I missed. With the first kids and all that stuff, and I ran into this guy. His name is Al, and he saw me at a Sunday night meeting that was her group. And we stayed away from each other in AA. We did separate programs, and for a reason. And so I meet this guy, and I've known him on and off, and he comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, Mark, how you doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, good." He looks, he goes, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm so sick of this crap." I said, "I'm sick of listening to this group." And like I said, it was all speaker meetings, and you get lazy bookies, what they were called. So if you hit the wrong skid, you'd hear the same group every single night. And it's like, oh, I just listened to this crap last night or the night before. And he looks at me, he goes, "How you?" I said, "Al, I'm sick of this." He goes, "Do you want to do something different?" And I said, "Okay, what do you got?" He goes, "Come down to Joy of Living on a Monday night, and we got something different going on." And I'm like, I've been there before. It's the same nonsense. But long story short, I go down there. They got single speaker, kind of like this deal, and just solution-based, everything. They got a commitment calendar on the wall. It's basically a photocopy of the month, and almost every single night of it is filled with, we're going to this treatment center this night, we're going to this treatment center this night, we're going to the jail this night. And it was active AA on steroids. And he just looked at me, he goes, "Get your book and get on the front lines with me, let's go. Get on the firing lines." And this is what was missing. So I did, you know, the next day I'm speaking at this treatment center, and then I'm down at the Veterans House, and with this and with that, and we're doing all this stuff. And I really honestly believe I can look back now, I was kind of feel like I was stuck in the 3.5 dimension rather than the 4th dimension. And this kind of just rocketed me into that next one, because this is what I was missing. It was just intensive AA work and just intensive, and you know, and he called me on a lot of stuff and changed my talk and thinking. And why are you saying that? Why are you saying that? And don't you dare tell somebody to do something that you ain't doing. And I still stick on that one too, because his sponsor caught him once kind of dusting a guy, saying, "No, just go to 90 meetings." And his sponsor came and said, "Do you do that?" He goes, "No." He goes, "Well, you better take his ass for the next 90 meetings to, you know," and he held him to it. He said, you got 90 meetings to go with this guy right now. And that's how he was serious. So be careful what you say. And and I learned that. But, it was so good, and it was just so that I said, you got to come. I said, get rid of that and come with me down here. And she ended up jumping in, and just at some point we were just absolutely out. There was probably, we'd show up at a place to be 20 of us, everybody carrying a big book, everybody just on fire with God in the 12 steps, and that's really is what I was looking for, and I really enjoyed that for years and years and years. Didn't realize how busy we were with it until we moved down here, and it all kind of stopped, and I came down here searching for a speaker meeting, and the first one we went to was up in Cleveland. We went together, and this guy conservatively was, I don't know, 150 years old, and I swear. And he stands up at the podium, and his first words were, I'm Joe Schmo, I'm an alcoholic. I was born, and we looked at each other, oh my God. And about 45 minutes later, he was only 40 years old. And it was like, So I try not to do that today. I used to try to do this with 20, 20, and 20. And, the drinking stuff, everybody in this room, we all, it's like I said, it's our common problem is a little bit of what binds. It's a common solution. And I tell the guys when I'm taking them through the work, if I drop dead today, one of these guys that I sponsor should be able to come in here tomorrow and pick up right where I left off, because it's all coming right out of this book. Let's say the first 164 pages, you don't always get to read that much with the guys because most of them don't make it through. And I know some guys up north who are a little bit hardcore. They stop after working with others. But that's where all the directions are, and that's what I try to do. So we're really on this AA thing, and it really just opened up a whole world in doing stuff like this and going here. And I'm not in a suit, but my sponsor can't see me. But it's too hot down here. I'm worried about sweating as it is. But yeah, you wear a suit and go speak and do all these things, and we had a good time, and we really did. And then we up and moved to Texas, and I got down here, and AA down here, with the transition down here was tough, and it was, to say the least. I started up where we live and went down, and I didn't make any friends on the way down, and not intentionally. There's some people who find me abrasive. Yeah, I'm a lot better now, and at least from what I've been told. In my review, I'm a lot better now. But I started, and I ended up calling this guy I know who kind of what you would call a circuit speaker, and I met him years and years and years ago. So I called him up, and he gave me a number of somebody. He goes, call this guy, So I call that guy, and he goes, you want me to be honest with you? I said, yeah, sure. He goes, 2 problems. He goes, as soon as you open your mouth, half the room don't like you. I was like, because of the accent thing. I said, I don't even hear that. He goes, oh God, really? I said, okay. I said, what's the other problem? He goes, you're too aggressive. And I said, I've been toning it down. And he's like, well, then you're screwed. I said, okay. But he said something. He goes, you know what you should do? He goes, you should go down to this place called the Humble House and look for this old boy named Sam. He goes, you two will get along. And I know today, that wasn't a compliment. To me, or to Sam. I know that today. But you know what? He was right. Because I went down there and I got lost looking for this place off the road, and I called, and he answered, and I'm like, yeah, and I go and I meet him in this. It was a Friday night, and this speaker didn't show up, so I go in there. They put me up here, which I was used to doing anyway, did all that, come out, talking, and he goes, I heard you know what you're talking about. I was like, okay, cool. And I loved that guy. Loved him. And I actually, weirdly enough, and I'll tell this quick story because of Dante, one of these wacky phone updates a few years ago, a voicemail from Sam popped up, told me to go talk to this guy named Dante. He's interested in talking to you. And somehow it just randomly popped up on a phone years after it was left. It was long deleted. And so I have it saved now. I actually got to give it to him on his anniversary. I think I played it from the podium. And at the end of it, he tells me he loves me. And you know what? And there's nothing you can do about it. That's what he always used to say. And I absolutely fell in love with him in the Humble House. And I came down here, and I struggled until I found that place. And I remember the first night I left there, I looked around and said, I found my home. There's nothing but new guys coming in. And at the time, Sam was running it, and I'm pretty sure. And or he had just stopped, I forget. But I'm pretty sure he was running it, and there's nothing but new guys. And I said, this is where I belong. This is where I can do my 12-step work. And I've been doing it ever since. I've weeded out the rest of them because this is where I belong. And I just honestly, I try not to be abrasive. I try not to be any of those things today. I try to be a maximum service to God and his fellows. And every day before I walk into one of these meetings, or every time before I walk into one of these meetings, I stop and I pause and I ask to be helpful and not hurtful. And I say the fear prayer, because even to this day, as it says, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble, driven by 100 forms of fear. That still exists to me today. It's just not the paralyzing, burdenous, painful fear that I had growing up until I found alcohol and other substances, until I got sober and started to incorporate God and the 12 steps into my life, where I could not function. At the end of my drinking, it stopped working. And so now I was drunk, loaded with fear and anger and all the rest of the stuff, and I couldn't get it to go away. I had a job, me and Dante have laughed about this, that I drug tested, because I knew there was some stuff I could do to get rid of this, but I couldn't do it because I had to take random drug tests all the time, and same thing with him. And he blames his alcoholism on that job. But, I don't think it's true in either one of our cases, but I was in so much pain at the end of my drinking that this seemed like a better option. And I looked for people. And the Humble House was great, because I would look for the guy who's sitting there with his head in his hand after the meeting. That's my guy. And I'd go over and talk to him, rather than the guy, I think it was at Porter, before I made my way down. He got his chip. And hey, I've been doing this since 1986. He got a 30-day chip. So I approached him after the meeting and said, buddy, you've been doing this shit wrong. And he didn't like that. He called me an a-hole. Then some guy behind me called me mentally ill. And I said, well, I'm going to check Porter off the list, and I went to Kingwood, And, the whole thing now is the drinking problem has been removed. I haven't had a thought of a drink. Even the mojito incident, it was decades ago. And, it's not my default position. It's been long removed from my default position. I wish I could say that anger and all the rest of that has, but God, even with her in the room, I'll say it, am I a lot better than I used to be? Make sure she doesn't, but anyway, not too long ago I heard somebody say that there's nothing wrong with being a dry drunk. And you know what? I would beg to differ, because I've met a few. And I sponsored a guy who had 20 years, and he kept telling me, can you drink again? And I just want to get back what I had. And I said, why? It didn't work. You drank again. I just want to get back what I had. He died drunk. I can't get back what I had. What I had wasn't good. What I had 10 years ago, the worst thing you could say to me today is, Mark, you haven't changed a bit. That would be the most insulting, hurtful thing you could say to me, because that's the whole point of this. I had so many character defects. I was uncomfortable. And today I get uncomfortable if I'm living in them. Today I get uncomfortable if my character defects are running the show. I'm not saying they still don't crop up, hence I fail my review every single day. But I get something to do about them today. I have something. The whole point of this is to change. So I come in here and I meet people, and there's a couple of guys sitting over here, and I've watched them change over the years. And every time I give Ryan his medallion every year, who, by the way, when he first met me, did not like me either. But I give him his medallion, and I watched him basically go from a homeless to a homeowner, married. I was at his wedding. And all these wonderful things. I mean, I get to watch miracles, and anybody in here who doesn't believe in miracles, just come to AA long enough. I've seen people come out of the scrap heap, and I'm not even talking about myself, just come off the scrap pile and to be a productive member of society today. There's a couple of them sitting, there's a bunch of them in this room that I know. And if that's not a miracle of God in the 12 steps, I mean, when Ebby Thatcher's sitting across from Bill, and Bill says, did this power originate in him? And no, there's no more power in him than there was in me at that moment. I didn't just suddenly say, you know what, I am going to do what my grandmother and mother said. Mark, you got to buckle down. I don't know what that meant, but I knew it had something to do with my drinking at the time. And I just couldn't buckle down. And I didn't just suddenly say, all right, this time it's gonna stick. This time I'm gonna make it work. If it wasn't for God and the 12 steps, as the man told me who 12-stepped me, God through AA, you never have to drink again. And I believed him, because he looked me right in the eye and he told me that. And I had nothing left to lose. So I said, what the hell? So after all these years of coming in here and character defects and I should be better and all this stuff and all the trials and low spots of family and raising 3 kids and moving to Texas and doing all these crazy things and living with my first ex-wife. And see, it's so hard. We used to go speak sometimes, and for fun, there'd be 3 or 4 of us up there at the treatment center. And if we had a stretched time, I would get a little heavy on how crazy my first marriage was and how this woman was nuts. And everybody up here would know that I was talking about her at the end. And by the time it would come to the end and it was her turn to speak, she'd always start with, I was the first wife. And, but there was one time we were doing that, and I was speaking at this treatment center. It was a holiday weekend, like Labor Day, Memorial Day. We were gonna have a cookout at the house afterwards. And right in the middle of me speaking, this lady gets up from the back, and she goes, don't listen to this guy, he's crazy. And I'm like, really? And I thought she worked there. It turned out she was a patient. I'm like, really? I said, we're leaving here and going to have a cookout. You're in lockdown and a detox on the weekend. They're supposed to listen to you. And she stormed out of the room. She couldn't bear to listen to me. And I remember that we laughed about it. We still laugh about it. And, but yeah, according to her, I was crazy. But anyway. But so I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, I do all these wonderful things. I remarry my ex-wife, have another kid, dog, cat, house, picket fence, the whole 9 yards. And the only thing that keeps me grounded is working with men, 12-step work. This is what I do. I'm not involved in AA in any other way. I'm not in service. I've been a GSR. I don't care. I don't understand the structure down here and all the stuff, the clubhouses. Don't care. I go out fishing for men. I try to do, and when I first moved down here, I was struggling. And one day I sat, I just put it, I pull up my contacts and I put the word AA in. Because if I meet you now, I put AA there under whatever the third line is, work or whatever. And I scrolled and I just stopped and I said, thank you. Because that's my job. I'm not in the success business. I'm not in the results business. I'm in the availability business. And I get hundreds of guys' numbers on my phone. I don't even know. Some of them are dead. More than some of them are dead at this point. And but that's it. I make my approach. I go talk to somebody. I see what's going on. Give them my number. I get their number. I ask them if they want to do something different this time. And the ones I worry about are the ones who told me, no, I know what to do this time. I hear the guys in the back corner going, I know the book. I went through the wheelhouse. Why are you living in the humble house? And then they go down, to the wheelhouse and they say, I know the book. I've been through the humble house. The circuit guys. And those are the guys I still look for. I do. I'll talk to anybody. I'll help anybody. I'll stick my hand out and approach anybody. I've chased guys out of meetings. I've been yelled at. I've been swore. I've been threatened. I've been all sorts of things. I've been called all sorts of nasty names. And I don't care. At the end of the night, I say thank you. And the whole point, again, is change. And there's somebody in here tonight that reminded me of a story. I've had to make a lot of amends over the years, surprisingly, of people, and my wife included, my children, which I hate doing that. And as my sponsor says, there is nothing worse than making amends to an a-hole. But you got to do it. And I've done it. He's done it. And early on in the sponsorship with him, I was at a meeting with him one day, and I seen him. He kind of dressed somebody down, and it was really out of line. And so the next day before a meeting, we're at a Dunkin' Donuts, because that's what everything happens around Dunkin' Donuts up north. We're sitting there, and he's probably only sponsored me for a handful of months at this point, and I'm intimidated by this guy in a lot of areas, and I love him to death. I talked to him today. He's in Florida, and he told me he loves me, and I told him I love him. And so I sit across, and I say my little prayer in my head, and I said, Al, I need to talk to you. He goes, what's up? I said, the way you talked to Joe the other day was out of line. And he sat back, and he just smiled. And he looks right at me. He goes, Mark, I love you. And I'm confused. And he goes, it came up in my review last night. He goes, I got up this morning. I went to Dunkin' Donuts, went over to Joe's house, knocked on his door, sat in his kitchen table and made an amends to him for my behavior yesterday. And it just, he didn't just say it, he did it. Like me, he can be, I guess, a little abrasive. So he makes a lot of amends also. And but over the years, I've made several, and a couple that, I was on the phone at work one day, and I found I can let you know that I'm upset with you without using words, like, little things like that. They've been pointed out to me so nicely, and eye roll and the rest of this stuff. But I'm on the phone one day, and this guy, and I hear him, and I happen to sigh because I was upset, and I hear this guy on the phone say, "Hey, we gotta hurry up. We gotta get this done. This guy's waiting on us." Blah blah blah, and then God comes into my conscious. He was like, "Stop it, stop it." And the guy wraps up and all this stuff, and so that it bugged me. It's bugging me that night. And it's like, really? And this is a work thing. This guy could have been anywhere. He could have been in Pennsylvania, anywhere from Pennsylvania, Dallas to anywhere. He's on the phone, and so it's like a Rolodex type thing. So I call the next day, do the same thing. Don't get him. Don't get him. Don't get him. A few days later, I get him, take care of business, and I said, "Hey, you got a minute?" He goes, "Yeah, what's up? What do you need?" And I made an amends for being demonstrative in the phone and being that total silence. And I was like, "Hello?" He goes, "You serious?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, thank you." I said, "Look," and I don't say it will never happen again because that's a lie. I've learned that because I've had to make more than one amends for the same thing. What I did, I said, and I don't say, "God willing, it won't happen again," because God is willing, I'm the one who fails. I say, "Hey, I'll do my best that this will not happen again." And about 2 weeks later, they had a big shake-up at work, and they're introducing all these new supervisors. There he is. I didn't know this guy from Adam. And so we go around and shake him, I meet him, and I tell him, "Mark." And I see him cock his head. I'm like, "Yeah, he remembers me." And about a minute or two later, he takes me aside. He goes, "It's really nice to meet you, and I appreciate what you did." I had no idea who this guy was. I never thought I'd meet him in my life. But that's not the intent of the amends and stuff like that. And little stuff like that. To this day, I left that job 3.5 years ago, and I'm still in touch with the guy, back and forth. We became friends, and on a professional level. And little stuff like that over the years has changed my life. It has changed. It made me realize that he was a guy back at home who could sit up here and read, do how it works from memory, and but he was. That was my edit. I almost swore. He was not a guy that I didn't like what he had, and I did not want what he had, because outside of this 1 hour, he was a jerk, and that's not what I want to be today. And I have a few other amends stories I could share with you and all that stuff, but I am going to share one more. I was at a meeting one day in Kingwood, and a friend of my wife's was sharing the meeting, and she said something, and I was sitting in I don't know if she remember this. I was sitting there, and my eyes accidentally rolled, almost right out of my head, and by the time they were done rolling, and I looked forward, I realized that this person saw me do this, and then the rest of the meeting, I was stuck in my head figuring out how I was going to make an amends for this, because I didn't want to. I never really want to, but when the meeting ended and we did the flappy stuff and all that, which I don't participate in, by the way, and for years everybody stared at me at the best thing that happened from COVID. We stopped all that nonsense, but we digress. We're back to it. And anyway, so when the meeting was over, I went and I apologized to her, and we chatted for a little bit, but I clean up my side of the street today, not because I have to, because I'm supposed to, because the spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. And I've been trying to live it now for 28 plus years, and I can say, if you could, when I got my 26-year medallion a few years ago, that was half my life. So I spent half my life prior to Alcoholics Anonymous and the other half, and it really, most of these don't mean much to me any longer. It's just another coin for the box. But the 26-year one did, because it was like and it couldn't be any more different than, black and white, 180 degrees different. My life does not even remotely resemble what it did the first half. And that one meant something to me. And I really did a lot of reflection on that. And what the guy who 12-stepped me said, God through AA, you never have to drink again, was just such an understatement of what can happen in here. I have mended a lot of fences. I'll wrap up here, but that mother I had another Dunkin' Donuts. I had to make a public amends to her. I went to a public place in case it went sideways. I really did. I was nervous that it was going to go bad. And we were at a Dunkin' Donuts in Stoughton. And by the end of it, she was crying. And I wasn't crying because I'm a man. But, she's crying. And then after all that, after everything, I'll say it now, God rest her soul, she goes, is there anything I did to make you an alcoholic? And my mother's all Italian, 100%. And I said, no, Mom. And if my father was Irish, 100%. She goes, so it was your father. and you know what? And I gave it, I said, you know what, yeah, it's a damn Irish curse. And I could see that she was relieved. And I was like, you can have it. Because there are no Italian alcoholics, other than the few I know in this room. But, other than those few, so it's been a fun, special journey. And I don't think I would have made it to 30. I probably would have died in a car accident, more likely. Or, one of us would have killed each other. And deservedly so. If she said anything bad about me, it probably wasn't even close to how bad it really was. And I was not a very nice guy. At the end of my drinking, I was just a miserable, angry, sometimes violent blackout drinker. And that is not what I started off as. I thought I was just, I needed relief from the internal pain I was in all the time. And alcohol worked for a very short window. And I see people drink for 40 years. It's like, I don't know how. I drank like a pig from day one to the end. I drank whiskey just as fast as I drank beer. And that's why I limited what I would drink and how much I could drink. And I didn't even know I was doing it at the time. I did what I had to do to function, sorry. But I would not change a thing. Somebody said not too long ago, like, if you could take a pill, one of my non-alcoholic friends, he said, if they made a pill that you take and you wouldn't be alcoholic anymore, he goes, would you take it? I said, no, there's no need. I said, there's absolutely no need for that any longer. And we got to talking, and he does not understand this. I said, I guess, through the conversation, I guess then I could just socially drink a 12-pack and a half a pint every night and be fine, right? He goes, no. That's still where I'm thinking. He goes home after a hard day of work, and he goes, I had 2 fingers of whiskey. I was like, what does that even mean? And he's like, I said, there's something wrong with you. And you know what? There's something wrong with me, and there still is, but that's all been removed. And today, I am happy, joyous, and free. And I used to hear that from the podium. Oh my God, what a, Or the other one that really clicked home is I'm grateful I'm an alcoholic. And I used to think, like, you're wacky. And why would you want this? Well, I don't think I ever would have found the relationship that I have today with God. I don't think I would have found a design for living that works in rough going. If you're participating in the game of life today, it's rough going. We've been through everything from births to deaths, everything in between. That mother who I hated and didn't speak to for years, even in sobriety. I got a call from my brother-in-law saying you should come. I flew up to, I could drop everything because I'm in a position I could, dropped everything, flew to Connecticut, and went and sat with my mother for 3 days. It was like Groundhog Day because every day I walked in, she goes, oh, Mark, you're here from Texas. And the next morning was the same thing, and I brought her coffee and a donut every day, and we sat there and we talked. And she'd become a little bit more lucid, and she hugged me in that last time, and I left there, didn't cry. And I knew it was the last time I saw her alive. And at one point during that visit, she told me how much she loved me and how much I have changed. And my mother did not like me, and I did not like her, but she still hated her more. And and at the end, she also knew that she had changed. And my kids know I have changed. And my daughter has no clue what she missed. And you know, I wouldn't change a thing. I really wouldn't. It's been a bumpy road, but it's been a good road, and I owe all the credit. And every night, I just, you know, thank you, Father, because I did not get what I deserved. Me and my sponsor talk about that all the time. I did not get what I deserved. If I did, I wouldn't be here. And I would say everybody in this room would qualify for that, because if I got what I deserved, I would not be here. I'd be dead, deservedly so. So this has been an honor and a privilege. Anytime I get to represent Alcoholics Anonymous, as uncomfortable as it is, I do. I take this very seriously. Alcoholics Anonymous to me is sacred. It saved my life. It absolutely saved my life. And I try to be there was an old guy when I got sober who said, be careful, you might be the only version of a big book somebody sees. And I took that to heart. I'm very careful with this, what conversations I have, what I wear. It was pointed out to me one day, I had a little mossy oak shirt on with a skull, and one of the gentlemen, I think he was busting my chops. He goes, what if some vegetarian or whatever won't ask you to work with him because of that shirt? And I went home and I prayed on that, and, you know, I never wore that shirt to Alcoholics Anonymous again. I try to stay as neutral as possible. There's not supposed to be anything in here besides our common solution. Our common peril, yeah, we can talk about that, but that's, you know, I don't talk about drinking with the guy. If we do, we're having fun. One day, me, Dante, and Ryan sat outside the Ember House and we were talking about vomiting. It was a fun night, you know, we're talking, you know, I mean, really, I got so much relief from that because I could drink again afterwards. But, you know, we don't talk about drinking. We talk about recovery. We talk about what God has done in our lives. For years, every time I sat with Dante, the God is good would come out of his mouth. And I don't think I can ever repay the opportunity I got in here. And the difference is I picked up the ball and I ran with it because I was desperate enough. As it says, circumstances made us willing. I was willing to do whatever you people told me to do, suggested, instructed, all the above. I followed the directions out of this book with the guys, mostly so they can never come back at me and say, you told me to do this, and it was wrong. So I stick to the literature in here, and it's the only life I know, and as Darrell always says, it's the best life I've ever lived. Thank you guys for having me.